This is the brief on breaking through the B2 vocabulary plateau. While B1 English is about basic survival, reaching B2 upper intermediate fluency means upgrading your language from black and white to high-definition color for true precision and persuasive power. First, eliminate weak words and literally ban the word very. At the B2 level, it's just a crutch. Instead of very tired, say exhausted, or swap very big for massive. Words are the paint for your conversations. Stop painting in black and white and use vibrant colors. Upgrading individual words is step one, but true fluency requires knowing how they naturally fit together. Second, train your ears and mouth to use chunks, not isolated words. Native speakers use collocations, natural word partnerships like make an effort instead of do an effort, and phrasal verbs like look into rather than investigate. So why do native speakers sound so impossibly fast? Well, listening word by word creates an overwhelming wall of sound, but listening for chunks slows the speed down completely. Once you're speaking in these chunks, how do you rapidly scale your vocabulary without just memorizing a dictionary? Finally, multiply your vocabulary instantly by mastering word families. Reaching for a dictionary actually destroys your conversational flow. Instead, become a linguistic detective and decode a word's anatomy in real time. Over 60% of advanced English comes from combining root words with prefixes and suffixes. Knowing the root noun competition instantly unlocks competitor, competitive, and uncompetitive, bridging grammar and vocabulary to turn you from a passive consumer into an active creator of language. Stop surviving in basic English and start commanding your conversations with powerful adjectives, natural word chunks, and flexible word families.
Welcome to Daily English Flow. Stay until the end for a special bonus tip. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Have you ever been in a conversation, maybe it's a high-stakes meeting at work or, I don't know, just a casual chat at a coffee shop, and you know exactly what you want to say in your head?
Oh yeah, constantly.
Right, like the thought is fully formed. But then when you actually open your mouth, the only words you can find to express it are just those basic building blocks like good, bad, big, or very.
Yeah, it is an incredibly isolating feeling, honestly.
It really is.
Because, you possess these complex, nuanced thoughts, right? You have all this adult life experience, but your ability to project that intelligence just gets severely bottlenecked by your vocabulary.
That bottleneck is so real. Or, maybe you feel like your speech is technically flawless, like you are hitting all your verb tenses perfectly.
Right, no grammatical mistakes.
Exactly, you are making structural mistakes, but you still sound kind of flat. A bit robotic, maybe. It's like you're speaking in standard black and white, but you can clearly hear that the native speakers around you are broadcasting in like high-definition color.
That distinction, that black and white utility versus high-definition color, that is the perfect way to frame it. Because if you are listening to this and nodding along, feeling that specific frustration, well, welcome to the B2 vocabulary plateau.
Ah, the dreaded B2 plateau. And that's exactly what today's deep dive is all about, conquering.
It's a tough place to be, but it's solvable.
Totally. So we are pulling from linguistic research, advanced language acquisition case studies, and modern ESL curricula just to figure out how to finally break through this barrier.
And we have a very clear goal here.
We do. Our mission today is straightforward. We are taking your language skills from just basic survival to rich, precise, and highly persuasive across all 6 core language skills.
Because the hard truth of language learning, and this is tough to hear, is that the strategies that got you to this plateau are not the same strategies that will get you off of it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
You really have to fundamentally change your relationship with the language itself.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because when you are at the B1 intermediate level, your primary goal is survival. Think of B1 like surviving in the wilderness.
Right.
You just need to learn how to build a fire, maybe catch a fish, order food, ask for directions. You learn just enough to not starve.
Exactly, just the essentials.
But B2 is like building a luxury cabin in that wilderness. Survival just isn't enough anymore. Now you want comfort, you want style, you want to invite people over and entertain them.
Which obviously requires an entirely different set of tools.
Yeah.
At the B2 upper intermediate level, the overarching goal shifts completely from sheer survival to precision and power.
Precision and power, I like that.
And the biggest trap people fall into here is the assumption that to sound fluent, They need to memorize, I don't know, 10,000 obscure, incredibly rare words that literally nobody actually uses in daily life.
Oh, like cramming those SAT vocabulary flashcards just to impress people at a dinner party.
Yes. Which always backfires. Always. You do not need obscure words. You need to upgrade the words you already use. It's really about optimizing your existing linguistic real estate.
Okay, so if the goal is upgrading our existing tools, we can't just start with speaking, right?
No, absolutely not.
Because before we can produce that beautiful high-definition language, we have to change how we consume it. The input have to shift before the output can shift.
That is the foundation of the whole process. So let's look at the input skills first, which are listening and reading.
Right.
Listening at the B1 level is a very granular, labor-intensive process. You are basically listening to catch individual words, grabbing them one by one as they fly by.
And then just frantically stitching them together in your head to guess the basic message.
Exactly. But at B2, you have to train your ears to catch what linguists call chunks.
Meaning we completely stop hunting for single words.
We stop building sentences brick by brick. Native speakers do not reach into a mental bag of nouns and a bag of verbs and glue them together on the fly.
That would take way too long.
Right. They use prefabricated blocks called collocations. These are just natural word partnerships that intuitively belong together.
The classic example of this is the verb do versus make.
Yeah.
Right? Like you don't say you are going to do a decision.
Right. You make a decision.
You make a decision.
Or consider the weather. You know, you don't step outside into a massive storm and call it strong rain. You call it heavy rain.
Even though grammatically, strong rain makes perfect sense. I mean, rain has force. It is strong. But to a native ear, it just sounds completely alien.
Right. And what's fascinating here is how focusing on these chunks completely changes your brain's perception of speed.
Oh, how so?
Well, when learners complain that native speakers talk too fast, it's rarely about the physical speed of the speaker's mouth. It's because the learner is trying to process every single word individually.
Which is exhausting.
It maxes out your cognitive load. If you listen word by word, the sheer volume of data is just overwhelming.
I think of this like listening to a piece of complex music.
Okay, yeah.
If you are constantly trying to identify every single individual note as a pianist plays this super fast run, you're going to get a headache. Your brain just can't keep up.
Right.
But if you train your ear to recognize a whole chord being played at once, just a single sound made of multiple notes, the music suddenly makes sense. You aren't overwhelmed by the speed because you're processing bigger blocks of sound.
That's a brilliant way to look at it. You are listening for the chords. And when you stop listening for isolated words and start listening for these chunks, especially, phrasal verbs like figure out or put off the language, actually becomes predictable.
Because your brain knows what's coming.
Exactly. Your brain anticipates what's coming next, and suddenly the native speaker seems to slow down.
Okay, so if our ears need to be trained to hear these chords, what happens when we look at a page? Because reading definitely has its own set of B1 habits that we have to break.
Oh, absolutely. And the most dangerous B1 habit in reading is the dictionary reflex.
Oh, I'm so guilty of this.
We all are. But at the B2 level, reaching for the dictionary every single time you see an unknown word actually destroys your reading flow.
It turns reading from an engaging adventure into this tedious mechanical chore.
It really does. It just shatters your flow state.
Yeah.
So at B2, you have to stop being a dictionary-dependent translator and become like a linguistic detective.
Okay, a detective. I like that.
Instead of looking down at your phone, you use a strategy called context clue triangulation.
Okay, context clue triangulation. That sounds like something straight out of a spy thriller. Walk us through how we actually triangulate a word.
Sure. So when you hit an unknown word, you don't stop. You keep your eyes on the page, and you look for 3 specific types of clues embedded in the surrounding sentences. There are definition clues, contrast clues, or example clues.
Okay, let's ground this with a real example from the case studies we looked at. Say you are reading a novel and you come across this sentence. Unlike his gregarious brother, Tom was very shy.
That is a perfect contrast clue. The word unlike acts as this massive signpost for your brain. It tells you that whatever gregarious means, it is the exact opposite of shy. You don't need a dictionary for that. You instantly deduce that gregarious means outgoing or sociable or extroverted.
And an example clue works similarly, right? Like if you read, bring some outdoor gear, such as tents, sleeping bags, and hiking boots.
Exactly.
You might have never seen the word gear before. But based on the examples provided, the tents, the boots, your brain just automatically categorizes it as equipment.
Yes, you triangulate the meaning based on the environment of the word, and you just keep moving.
I do have to push back on this a little bit, though.
Okay, go for it.
If we completely abandon the dictionary and we just boldly guess the meanings of words based on context, aren't we risking learning a word completely wrong? Like, what if my triangulation is just way off?
That is the friction point most learners hit, and it raises a really important question about perfectionism.
Yeah, because we want to be right.
Of course. But the goal at B2 when you are reading is not 100% perfection on the first try. The goal is 80% accuracy so that you can actually maintain the flow of reading authentic native-level texts.
So we are basically prioritizing volume and momentum over flawless translation.
Exactly, because of how the brain learns context. If you misinterpret a word slightly, the next time you see it in a completely different sentence, your brain will subconsciously adjust its definition.
Oh, it autocorrects.
It self-corrects.
Right.
The massive exposure you get by reading fluidly without stopping every 10 seconds far outweighs the risk of a slight mistranslation.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So we are taking in high-definition input. Our ears are catching chunks, and our eyes are triangulating meaning. But there is a massive gap between, like, hearing a native speaker use a great phrase and actually having the reflex to use it yourself when you're put on the spot.
Oh, huge gap.
So let's pivot to the output shift, speaking and writing.
Speaking at B2 is all about impact. You want to be engaging, not just understood. And honestly, the single fastest, most actionable way to upgrade your speaking is to apply the very elimination chart.
Oh, the word very is an absolute crutch. We just lean on it whenever we don't have the right adjective.
It is the ultimate weak word. It dilutes the power of whatever you are trying to say. So instead of saying, you are very tired, you upgrade that to exhausted or drained.
Or instead of saying a project is very big, you describe it as massive.
Right. And instead of a situation being very bad, it becomes atrocious or dreadful.
It's amazing how just swapping out very plus a basic adjective for one strong, powerful word instantly makes you sound so much more authoritative.
It completely changes your presence in the room.
But there's a flip side to this, right?
Yeah.
Because we want power, but we definitely don't want to sound like an academic textbook. If we use highly formal words for everything in a casual setting, it gets weird fast.
Very weird. Which brings us to the crucial role of phrasal verbs in everyday speech. Native speakers literally live and breathe phrasal verbs.
Right.
If you are sitting at a coffee shop and you tell your friend, I recently discovered that my neighbor cannot tolerate the noise. I mean, it's grammatically flawless, but it's terribly stiff.
You sound like a Victorian novelist who just time traveled to a Starbucks.
Exactly. A native speaker would naturally swap those formal Latin-based verbs for phrasal verbs. They'd say, I found out that my neighbor can't put up with the noise.
Okay, yeah.
Discover becomes find out. Tolerate becomes put up with.
Why do native speakers actually prefer that, though? Is it just laziness?
Not at all. It's really about rhythm. English is a stress-timed language, so phrasal verbs just fit the natural, bouncy, punchy rhythm of casual English much better than those long, multi-syllable formal words.
That makes sense. Now, to actually implement this, the language curricula we reviewed suggest a very specific strategy called the 3-second upgrade.
Yes.
Basically, when you catch yourself in conversation, about to say a weak word like good or nice, you force yourself to physically pause for 3 whole seconds to search your brain for the B2 alternative. But honestly, if I pause for 3 seconds in a real live conversation with you, aren't I going to sound incredibly awkward and much less fluent?
I mean, it will feel agonizingly long to you, yes. The internal silence is deafening. But to the listener, a thoughtful pause actually projects confidence.
Really?
Yes, it looks like you are carefully weighing your thoughts. But more importantly, you have to embrace that temporary awkwardness because it physically forces your brain to remap its default settings. You are breaking the ingrained B1 neural pathway and forging a new B2 pathway.
Okay, I see the logic of breaking the habit, but what if I take that confident 3-second pause, I search my brain, and just nothing? I completely blank. The B2 word just isn't there.
When that happens, and it will, you deploy what linguists call the circumlocution lifeboat.
Circumlocution.
Yeah.
Which literally means talking around something. How does the lifeboat actually work in practice?
Well, a B1 speaker forgets a word, panics, and either freezes completely or awkwardly switches back to their native language.
Right.
But a B2 speaker just smoothly drives around the pothole by describing the word's function, appearance, or context.
So if I'm at the office and I completely forget the word stapler, I don't panic and just point at my desk like a caveman. I just say, Could you hand me the office tool you use to connect people together?
Precisely. You maintain the fluency and the momentum of the interaction even when your specific vocabulary completely fails you.
That's great.
It is a vital survival skill that paradoxically makes you look highly proficient because you're proving you can navigate a breakdown without breaking a sweat.
That is incredibly freeing, honestly. Just describe the thing. Now, speaking obviously requires fast reflexes, but writing is where we have the luxury of time. We can edit.
Right.
So we really have zero excuse for weak words on a page.
None. Writing at this level is all about elegance and mastering what examiners call lexical resource.
Which means what?
That just means using a wide range of vocabulary accurately and aggressively avoiding repetition.
And the strategy that really stood out in the sources for writing is the vague word ban.
Oh, I love this one.
The rule is so simple. Before you hit send on an email or submit an essay, you do a literal Control-F search on your document, and you delete vague placeholder words. You ruthlessly banish words like thing, stuff, good, and bad.
And you force yourself to replace them with precise terminology. So a thing becomes a factor or an element. Good becomes beneficial or advantageous.
And bad becomes detrimental.
Exactly. It instantly elevates the entire tone of the piece. But there is another trap in writing, which is repeating that great new word way too many times.
Oh, yeah?
That's where the pronoun and synonym echo comes in.
Because good writers absolutely despise repeating the same noun in consecutive sentences. It just feels clunky.
It does.
Think about how we usually write reports. You might start by writing, the government introduced a new tax policy. But in the next sentence, you do not want to say tax policy again.
Right, you need variation.
So you echo it. You say, this legislation aims to reduce emissions. And then in the third sentence, you shift it once more. The new rules will affect major corporations.
Tax policy, this legislation, the new rules.
Yeah, it is the exact same subject, but the vocabulary continuously evolves.
It creates this beautiful, cohesive flow. And it signals to the reader or to the examiner, if you're taking a proficiency test, that you have total, effortless control over your vocabulary. You aren't just repeating what you know, you are orchestrating it.
Which brings us to the foundation of everything we've talked about so far. Because to support this level of brilliant speaking and elegant writing, we clearly need a much better filing system in our brains.
We absolutely do.
Let's look at the core mechanics of how we learn: vocabulary and grammar.
At B2, your vocabulary has to undergo a major structural shift from the concrete to the abstract.
Right.
At lower levels, you talk about physical objects around you, food, directions, clothes. But at B2, you are discussing complex ideas, arguments, and philosophies.
We're talking about abstract nouns. And this shift changes everything. Like, you stop saying the good points and bad points, and you start discussing the advantages and disadvantages.
Exactly. Your opinion elevates to a perspective. A difficult choice is articulated as a dilemma. Using abstract nouns just gives your thoughts the intellectual weight they deserve.
But practically speaking, how do we actually get these abstract concepts to stick in our memory? Because I can read a list of abstract nouns all day, but by tomorrow morning, they just leak right out of my brain.
This is where cognitive science comes in, specifically the personalization rule. The human brain is remarkably efficient at deleting information it deems irrelevant.
Oh, for sure.
So if you write down a new vocabulary word and copy a generic dictionary sentence like, the runner was exhausted, your amygdala, which is the emotional center of your brain, assigns it zero importance. It will literally discard it while you sleep.
Because I don't care about the imaginary runner. There are no emotional stakes.
Precisely. You have to create an emotional tag for the memory. You connect it to your own life. Instead of the runner, you write, I was absolutely exhausted after studying for my finance exam last night.
Wow.
Suddenly, it has an emotional anchor in your lived reality.
And if you combine that personal emotional anchor with a spaced repetition system, like an SRS app such as Anki or Quizlet, you are basically hacking the learning process.
You really are, because spaced repetition directly combats the Ebbinghaus forgetting curve.
Right.
It doesn't just quiz you randomly. The algorithm tracks the biological decay of your memory and tests you on that specific word right at the exact moment you are about to forget it.
That is so cool.
It forces your brain to work harder to recall it, which physically thickens the neural pathway, moving the word from fragile short-term memory into permanent long-term storage.
Okay, so we have covered listening, reading, speaking, writing, and vocabulary retention. Now for the final and maybe most powerful piece of the puzzle, Grammar.
Yes.
Here's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
Because grammar at this level is no longer about memorizing arbitrary verb conjugation tables.
No, the focus completely shifts. At B2, grammar and vocabulary actually merge into a single concept known as word family.
Word families.
Understanding this is truly the ultimate cheat code for expanding your vocabulary overnight with minimal effort.
I love a good cheat code. How does this merger actually work?
It is based on word formation. If you understand the root of a word, and you understand how to attach different prefixes and suffixes, learning one single new word actually unlocks 4, 5, or even 6 variations of it simultaneously.
Okay, let's use the root word compete as an example.
Perfect. So
Yeah.
you learn the base verb to compete. But if you know your suffixes, you instantly know the noun for the person doing the action, the competitor.
Right.
You know the abstract noun for the event, competition. You know the adjective, competitive, the adverb competitively. And if you know your negative prefixes, you instantly know the opposite adjective, uncompetitive.
Let me try an analogy here to visualize this. Think of word families kind of like a Swiss Army knife.
Okay.
You don't just have one single tool, right? You have a base handle that holds multiple tools.
Mhm.
When you are building a sentence in real time, you just look at the grammar slot that needs to be filled.
I like that, the grammar slot.
So if I'm looking at my sentence and there's an a, and, or the right before the blank space, I know my grammar slot requires the noun tool.
Yep.
So I just fold out the suffixation or suffumant suffix attachment. If the slot is describing an action, I need the adverb tool, so I fold out the mostly suffix. You aren't reaching for a brand new word. You just deploy the exact grammatical attachment you need for that specific sentence structure.
That is a perfect visualization. And the result is that you stop being a passive consumer of vocabulary and you become an active creator.
Wow.
You are bending and shaping root words to fit the precise grammatical structure you need in the moment. It gives you incredible agility in your speech.
So what does this all mean when we put the pieces together? When we zoom out and look at all 6 skills we've covered today, the big takeaway is that conquering the B2 plateau is fundamentally a perspective shift.
Exactly.
It is not about brute forcing thousands of obscure flashcards into your brain. It is about taking the vocabulary you already possess and treating it like a set of very fine, highly versatile tools.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, expanding your word power in this way isn't just an academic exercise.
No.
It isn't just a trick for passing a proficiency exam. It gives you the literal tools to express your true intelligence, your nuanced humor, and your actual personality in a second language.
Yeah.
It removes that terrible claustrophobic feeling of being trapped inside a limited vocabulary.
You finally get to just be you in English.
Ah.
But before we wrap up, I want to leave you with a final provocative thought to mull over today, something that builds on everything we've just unpacked.
Oh, I'm intrigued.
Think about how this exact same framework applies to your native language.
Taking these concepts back to the mother tongue, that's a fascinating angle.
Right. Because think about it. How often do we get stuck on a plateau in our own native language? Think about the emails you fire off at work or the arguments you have with your partner when you're stressed out. How often do you fall back on the exact same tired, vague, repetitive phrases just because it's easy?
We all default to our own linguistic comfort zones. We just do.
What if tomorrow morning you applied the vague word ban to your native language?
Wow.
What if you actively replace the things and stuff in your work emails with precise factors and elements? What if you tried the 3-second upgrade before you responded in your next staff meeting just to find a slightly sharper, more colorful adjective?
It changes the dynamic of how people perceive you entirely. Precision is power, regardless of what language you are speaking.
Exactly. How much more persuasive, precise, and powerful could you be in your own life if you just took a moment to upgrade your default settings? It is definitely something to experiment with. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Start listening for those high-definition chords, banish the word very from your vocabulary, and go add some vibrant color to your conversations today.